Well, folks, welcome once again to another Toronto Sports Rush post Maple Leafs live reaction show brought to you by the Bet Rivers Network. I am joined once again by esteemed NHL analyst Pierre McGuire. And Pierre, it's like we were watching chapters of two different hockey games tonight, weren't we?
We were, Kyle. And in advance, I'll apologize for my throat. I'm not Craig Berube. I wasn't yelling at the players, but I've been doing a lot of hockey games. I've been in a lot of rinks, and I've been in a lot of different area codes.
Help, he was yelling at me.
There you go. No, I would never yell at you.
No.
Anyways, all that being said, I liked the beginning part of the game for Toronto. I love the Max Domi hit. I thought that was fantastic on Verhaeghe. I thought the response by the team was outstanding. And then the last 12 minutes of the first period, I didn't like them at all for Toronto. Second period, they were kind of disinterested. Third period, I thought Toronto played really well. Kyle, I thought they played really, really well. The way they have to play if you want to win in the playoffs. But that probably 12 minutes in the first and probably another 15 in the second wasn't good enough.
Yeah, the third period was clearly they dominated that. They played the hockey that they, I cut myself off here a little bit. We're on the edge of the playoffs now, and they can't keep playing not a complete game like they did tonight. They need to put together three periods. They've been slow starters a lot of the time this year. They're consistently outshot in the first period. Pierre, what is it going to take for this team to play playoff hockey as we come down the stretch here?
I think one of the things they may want to do is create an energy line so that when you start a game, you chip pucks in deep, you start to get some offensive zone time, you get some big hits on the opposition, you win some faceoffs, you really dominate the territorial part of the game. For whatever reason, they don't seem to do that now. Tonight, I thought they did. I thought they really did. But that's one of the things. The other thing that was really apparent, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, Kyle. One of the things that became really apparent, Florida that broke down their end zone coverage pretty well for good portions of the tail end of the first and most of the second, getting the pucks back to the point, and Toronto giving up a lot of point shots, which led to screen opportunities, which led to rebounds, which led to scramble situations, which led to Toronto defending more than attacking. That's something they're going to have to fix internally.
The McCullough goal, as you say, that was a very quick and decisive defensive breakdown off that Florida forecheck, and that's their style of game. But the Leafs now have shown an inability to respond to that playing style for a complete three periods. But let's go back to the start of the game. We have the born-again catalyst, John Tavares, opening it up off a beautiful pass from Nylander. They've got a fight. They've got a big hit. They've got and they killed a penalty all in the first few minutes of the game. And it looked like we were off to the races, start planning the parade, and then complete and total breakdown. Bennett had a big game. The guys that needed to have big games for Florida did, and the big guys for Toronto did not, quite frankly, with the exception of their first goal, which was a beautiful play.
Yeah, no, and I think that's more than fair. I don't think you're being mean to anybody. I think you're calling it the way it is. Here's my concern. Austin Matthews is a critically important player for this Leaf team, Kyle, and I think you would agree with me.
Yeah.
Something doesn't seem right.
Something
half a gear slow. The release point on his shot is not as exciting as it used to be. The creative playmaking's not there because, again, I think he's a half a gear slow. So I don't know if it's an injury. I don't know if it's mental fatigue, physical fatigue, the Four Nations, whatever it might be. They need to snap him out of it.
They do. And like we discussed pre-show, the Sam Bennett power play goal, the late one, he looked lost on that play. Yeah. And I'm not here to crap all over Austin Matthews. He's one of the best hockey players in the world, but he's playing like someone that's recovering from something that isn't quite at 100% or maybe not even quite near it. And it's showing now. And we're late in the season and going into the playoffs, they need their big guy to be the big guy. And we can only speculate, but it's quite clear he's not playing his main game anymore.
He's not the same player as he was a year ago. I think that's probably the fairest way to say it. And he was phenomenal last year. You talk about one of the best players in the world. That's what he was last year, and they need him to get back some facsimile of that. The other thing is lost battles on the boards, lost battles by the offensive and defensive blue line. And Scott Lawton's one of my favorites. I know he just came over from Philadelphia. He loses a situation at the offensive blue line, turns it over. It ends up being a power play goal that, we've talked about, and that can't happen. That in a playoff game, that puck's got to be out. It's got to be out.
Well, they were talking during the broadcast tonight, and they've got a couple of new guys that are they're plugging them in as the pieces that they feel like they need to get them over the hump. Yesterday was the first time they've practiced in almost a
Mhm.
month.
Yeah.
And you've got new guys coming in, looking at iPads and whiteboards, trying to figure out a system, playing on one of the best teams in the NHL. If they're a little lost, they can be forgiven a bit, but they need to get up to speed yesterday.
Yeah.
It's certainly they've been playing too well recently for it to be full panic mode. But they played a good game against Vegas, who's another league gunner, but in the other conference. But against Florida, they were flat for most of tonight's hockey game, and it can't keep going like this. It's not sustainable.
Well, no, especially if you want to make traction in the playoffs and being in the 2-3 matchup, let's just say it's Tampa and Toronto. I
Yes,
don't know. I don't know how warm and fuzzy that matchup would be. You want to try to get out of that 2-3 and get into the one hole. Florida
yeah,
separated themselves a little bit more here tonight. They have two more opportunities, Toronto does,
I do.
to play against Florida before the end of the year. That's a positive for the Leafs. But here's the ultimate thing. Tonight's Thursday. Saturday, they got a huge dress rehearsal against Ottawa.
Huge.
Ottawa's smoking hot. They're in Fuego. They were up and down tonight against Boston, but I can tell you right now, they're playing with an identity now. Getting Dylan Cousins changed the dynamic of their team a lot. This is a huge test for Toronto on Saturday night.
If we can have our production team just quickly bring up the Atlantic standings right now, they have that graphic ready for us. You were talking about this. I've talked to EJ Radic about this as well. The need to finish first in the conference is paramount at this point for that placement, because the Leafs are not only looking for an advantageous first round matchup, psychologically speaking, they need that first round win against, there's no such thing as a lesser team in the NHL anymore, but they're not going to be as good as Tampa or Florida or whoever that 2-3 matchup ends up being for them. Can you say about that? Like, what does this mean to they need to play with more urgency? That is clear.
Yeah, urgency is a great word. See, I don't like the term desperation because when you're
No,
desperate, Kyle, you start running around all over. Your hair's on fire. That's what happened to me. I got my hair on fire. Uh, but no,
it
but
spread to your throat.
but in all seriousness, this test Saturday night against Ottawa is really important for them,
Big
and
time.
it's about measuring up. It's about competing. It's about playing with urgency, which you just touched on. The other thing to me with more than anything else with Tampa, they made significant adjustments at the trade deadline as well. You know, Yanni Gord's got an identity. Oliver Bjorkstrand's got an identity. Victor Hedman's having an unbelievable year. And I got bad news for people in Toronto. Andre Vasilevsky's back. That guy's
Yeah.
playing. That guy's playing the way he's been capable of playing for a long time. He took a little time off. Now he's back and he's playing.
So moving into the playoffs right now, and we were messaging about this during the game itself. Their special teams does not look good. They are having trouble killing the power play. I mean, you're playing one of the best teams in the NHL. So sorry, killing the penalty. I apologize. But their power play, they're lost on the ice. Their puck movement, their puck cycling is bad. What if you're Berube? How do you? Special teams becomes paramount in close playoff games. They need power play goals and they need big kills, especially late in games. They're not getting either of those things right now. How does Berube steer that ship in the other direction?
Let's talk the penalty kill first. I
Sure.
think getting Tanev back tonight, Cal's a big thing for them. He'll help that. I think Coburn will get more and more comfortable with the penalty kill. That will help. And I think Lawton will get more and more comfortable. That's where I think people are going to see the biggest impact from Scott Lawton's going to be in penalty kill situations. So those three dynamics will help the penalty kill. I truly believe that. And shot blocking will become more and more paramount as you get closer to the playoffs. So a guy like Simon Benoit will matter when it comes to that. Jake McCabe will matter when it comes to that. On the power play, though, they've been running this 5-forward set. I get it. I understand it. They need to move the puck more quickly. Now, I'll give you an example. There was one look tonight in the second. No, it was in the third period. Toronto moved the puck fantastically well on the power play. Bing, 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 shot on goal. Bing, 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 shot on goal. So they can do it. They show they could do it. Now they just have to do it with consistency.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very easy for us to get stuck on all of the negatives to take away from tonight. Bottom line is they played a really good third period. They only lost by a goal, and there are some positives tonight. That was the best game Max Domi has played this season.
Yes.
And if he's going to start playing hockey like that, that could be a major force for them moving forward.
That's a great point. I completely agree. Max was outstanding tonight. I thought Carl Yarncroke was very good tonight too. You were talking about him earlier.
Yeah,
That's another positive
all
for
over
him.
the ice.
And the other thing, Cal, I forgot to mention. This is on me. The Toronto Maple Leafs hit the same goalpost twice in the third
They
period.
did.
And I just want to be fair. So it's not as bad as what it seems, but the problem is that's not a 2-point game. It's a 4-point game because not
That's
only
right.
do you lose to Florida, you lose the game that you were counting on winning against Florida. So you're dropping back, and now you got only 2 games left. So you're running out of racetrack when it comes to being number one in the division. And if you're, again, there's no guarantees that anybody's going to win this thing, but it would be a lot easier, I think, to be number one in the Atlantic than to be the 2 or the 3 seed.
Always find the path of least resistance. And you look, okay, fine. It's just one game. It's just a 3-2 loss. They've been really, really hot for a while now, and everything appeared good. But the problem is this game and what it represents to the fan base. Now, does the media listen to the way I'm talking tonight? My tone has changed. Does the pressure, because that's a factor in Toronto, you don't get to escape that. This was not a must win game in the truest sense of the word, but it's about as close as it gets, even if just for psychological reasons.
It's a very fair point. So here's what I would say: leadership matters. So the coach who's won a Stanley Cup, he's got experience dealing with this stuff. Now, it wasn't in Toronto, it was in St. Louis, but nonetheless, he's got experience dealing with it at the Stanley Cup final level. Mike Van Ryan has experience. Lane Lambert has experience. Mark Savard has experience. So the coaching staff's not going to be overrun by the media. They're not going to be intimidated. That's going to be an important thing in this situation. The other part is Brad Treliving, I think, has handled the media really well in Toronto.
Yeah.
I think Brendan Shanahan's been a really good foil for him as well. And having Keith Pelly in the front office and the head of Toronto or Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment's a huge thing too. So I think this is the first time in a while where they're not going to get bulldozed by the media. And I think the players know that. And I think that's a big positive for them as well.
Absolutely. One interesting matchup to discuss tonight very quickly, the goaltending matchup, because we had Stolarz that came over from Florida. Both goalies were good tonight. Both were playing. There seemed to be a lot of next to very rough activity around Stolarz, and that felt very intentional by Florida. And if I'm a Florida fan, that's a very smart move. Set that tone that he's going to be jostled a lot heading into a potential playoff matchup, and make sure it's in his head, because Stolarz does go to that place sometimes, and it can be to his detriment.
That is such a good point, and it's really relevant. And AJ Greer was a great example of that. They started jousting in the second period. I'm like, okay, Greer knows something. He's practiced against this guy. He knows him really well. He's going to get in his headspace. I remember once coaching in the Stanley Cup final in 1992. We played Chicago, and they had Eddie Belfour and they had Chris Chelios, and we knew we can get them a little off their game. And in Game 3, if you go watch the tape at some point in your life or your career, you'll see we got Belfour and Chelios right off their games because we knew, just from having watched so much as a staff. And it's the same thing with Florida, to your point, with Stolarz. They're going to have to make sure, Toronto, that is, that they just protect them and keep them down a little bit when it comes to that stuff.
And another point with the Florida team that came into Toronto tonight, they came into Toronto without Aaron Ekblad, who's now serving as 20-game suspension for a barely PED. But that's an impressive thing to do on Florida's behalf, to come in without that guy and play the way they did tonight and take a very, very big road game. They look like they'll be fine down the stretch without him. And I believe he's going to miss the first couple of games of the playoffs. That's going to work out too, right? The first 2 or 3. I don't remember the exact
I believe it's the first 2.
First 2.
But one
so not
thing,
the go ahead. Sorry.
No, finish. Please finish.
I was done.
So no, but Kyle, I think the biggest thing is progressive management. They knew as a front office that there was probably going to be something wrong with Ekblad. I think they had a heads up. So they were proactive when they went out and got Seth Jones. And the other part of the Seth Jones acquisition that I don't think has got nearly enough play is that Bill Zito was the assistant GM in Columbus when Seth Jones played there. There's a relationship there. There's internal knowledge there where they know exactly what Seth Jones is. So unlike a lot of deals where people only know one side, the deal they're giving up, Florida knew both sides. They knew what they were giving up, and they also knew what they were getting. And if you look at the way Seth Jones is being deployed right now by Florida, it's really good. It's really good. So this is the best Seth Jones has played in a long time. because
Yeah.
he wasn't
Yeah.
playing well in Chicago. I can tell you that right now.
No, and he was robbed by Stillars with about 10 to play. That was Stillars' best save of the night, but that was that shows the hot hand Jones carried into this game tonight. And, on the surface, again, this is one hockey game. Let's see what happens Saturday night. They've been fine recently, but it seems like all of the guys Florida need to have lined up for a playoff run once again. It seems like they're right there, and the Leafs are kind of a little spotty all over the place. So, it's tricky. I'm just going through my game notes here. There's not a lot of positive, but it wasn't that bad of a game. Is this an overreaction? Am I in overreaction mode? Because you seem very calm.
No, I don't think you're in overreaction mode, but I do think there's some pressing issues.
Yeah.
They got to get Austin Matthews going with more
Yeah.
consistency. They got to figure out the power play and have that be more consistent. I think the inclusion of Tanev and obviously Lawton and I think Brandon Carlo will make a difference on the penalty kill. I don't think there's an issue with their goaltending. I love the way, and I want to be really positive here. I thought Max Domi was really good. I can't stress that enough. And he can play anywhere in your lineup. We saw that in the tail end of the game tonight. They had him playing with Johnny Tavares and Willie Nylander. So there's a lot to like there. I still think a guy like Lorentz, especially when you play Ottawa and Florida, Lorentz has to make an impact. McMahon has to make an impact. Domi has to. I'm talking physicality.
Yes.
Because you know what Brady Tkachuk's going to do on Saturday night. He's going to watch the tape just like you watch the game tonight. And you say, if A.J. Greer, who played at Boston University where I played, if A.J. Greer can go in and run on Stolars, I'm going to do the same thing plus. I'm going to get him off his game. And so it's a big challenge. Toronto's going to have to be stout, really stout on Saturday night, I believe.
Yeah, it's always a big match against Ottawa, the interprovincial rivalry. But back to Domi. If this is the Max Domi we see for the rest of the year, and it took tonight's lost match to bring him out of that shell, then it was probably worth the L, because he could be a valuable piece playing such a complete hockey game. He was physical. He scored a great goal, and he was all over the ice tonight. Energy level was as high as we've seen him since he came back from his time off. And, let's take that into Saturday night, because as you suggested, with the team Ottawa's putting on the ice, they're going to need him to play the game he played tonight.
No question. And I was just at Mario Lemieux's fantasy camp. I talked to you from there. And Ty Domi, Max's father, was there, and we were talking about the way Max could help influence the game in Toronto. And tonight is exhibit A of what Ty was talking to me about at Mario's fantasy camp. We were talking about the speed, the physicality, the fighting, the ability to finish, the ability to make plays, the ability to defend in his own zone. There are all these things that Ty and I were talking about. And tonight I just saw them all, and I was thrilled for the kid. Obviously he wants to win, but I was really thrilled for the kid.
The heroes out of the shadows are often the playoff story for a lot of these teams, because, if Matthews thinks he had it rough tonight, come playoff time, he'll be blanketed.
Oh, yeah.
Come playoff time, Marner will be blanketed. Come playoff time, that all that room Nylander likes dancing in is going to disappear. And the Domies of the world are the guys that are going to step up and do it. There was a very funny moment during the game right after the fight where they cut to Ty in the stands, and the commentators of the game made a joke that he had pulled 17 muscles in his body and face trying not to smile because, it was just a great hockey moment for dad watching son. And, he won that fight. That was an absolute beating. And I'm an old school hockey guy. There'll always be a place in my game of hockey for that. So let's look down the road a little bit too here. Let's take a look at the the East wildcard standings first as we look ahead. Saturday, they got 3 more home games in a row here right now. Saturday, they're home at Ottawa. We could talk that one to death, but that's, it is what it is. The Senators are, they're in the number 1 position, so they're fighting for their lives too. Tonight was a playoff hockey game for all intents and purposes that lived up to that hype. I expect Saturday to even exceed it, perhaps, as far as intensity. Saturday night in Toronto, you can't beat that. So we cover that to death. Monday, they're at home versus the Flames, another Canadian team. And then they've got next Wednesday against the Avalanche. These are hockey games that they're in tough in all of these.
Yeah, no, they are. The good news is I think they were getting road weary. It's good that they're home. They need some quality. The other thing, and you touched on it before, enough with the video boards and the whiteboards and all the dry erase boards. They need real on ice practice, especially to acclimate the new players into the system, which I think they'll get. And when you have good practice time, your special teams can really improve. So that's something we talked about with the penalty kill and the power play. So that's positive. To me, it's Saturday night is the measuring stick. Calgary's fighting for a playoff spot. Rangers are fighting for a playoff spot. Nashville's not fighting for anything. Colorado knows what their fate is. They're going to be a home ice team. So the Ottawa game matters a lot. Start your week by winning on Saturday night if you're Toronto.
Yeah, it's, I just lost my point, but for them to play with this intensity moving forward now, they've got all the pieces in play. We've talked about this being the most complete Leafs hockey team we've seen in quite some time. That remains after tonight in place, but I actually agree with you in the sense that Saturday is a bigger test than tonight because you've got a team fighting for something a little different. We know that both Toronto and Florida are going to be in the playoffs. Ottawa's fighting for their lives right now, and they're going to bring a level of intensity that we didn't even see tonight. And they've got a great roster. They've shored some things up before the deadline, and we might be looking at a playoff preview. They might end up facing them. So who really knows where this all lands? What a first round series that would be.
Well, I covered those many moons ago. They were delightful to watch. Not a lot of fun for the fans probably or the coaches, but I think the players enjoyed them significantly.
Pierre, before we get out of here, because I think your voice has had just about enough for the evening.
No,
and the
Leafs, I'll keep battling.
You're good. Well,
I'll keep battling.
You're battling beyond. Hey, they could have used you in the second period. I wanted to go back to just as a hockey guy, can you explain to us? It was probably a logical decision for them to not be on the ice practicing as much, but we've both been in agreement here that needs to now change. But that was because of the intensity of that road schedule, right? And the fact that they only came home to play San Jose on a tough travel schedule, so that probably barely felt like a home game. That's why they haven't had as much time other than morning skates, right?
Yeah, that and time zone travel, 100%. You're spot on. So part of the problem is with this year's schedule, it's condensed because of what we saw with the Four Nations event. It's a big problem. People want to have these events, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh, there's a toll to pay. My best players are going to be tired. My best players are going to be injured, or the schedule is going to get compressed. You could be the Montreal Canadiens. In 5.5 days, they're going to have to play 4 games in 10 days. I mean, in 10 days, they got to play 4 games in 5.5 days. That's crazy. That's crazy. So they're not getting quality practice time either. Practice matters, especially just before the playoffs. It's not about hard skating. It's about fine-tuning your power play, fine-tuning your special teams, fine-tuning your face-off play, fine-tune. By the way, kudos to Florida. When the Leafs pulled their goalie, we talk about fine-tuning. That was level A playoff performance in the neutral zone by Florida.
Masterful.
Level A.
And also, Florida's very disciplined at not just turning around and winging the puck at the open net and risking an icing and trapping your guys on the ice. They're confident enough in their ability to play that neutral zone hockey game that they don't need to do it. That's a team poised for a deep playoff run with that level of maturity and discipline.
And they have the experience, as you correctly say, Kyle. This is my biggest thing is we talk about practice time. That's been implemented over the years. So even the new guys now that are coming in, they're saying, okay, now I get it. I see it. And I guarantee you with the coaches, whether it's Jamie Compon, Sylvain Lefebvre, Paul Maurice, it doesn't matter. Those guys are on the bench and they're telling them, look at what he's doing. Look at what – and we didn't see Sasha Barkov for good portions of that game. We didn't see it. He's their best player. We didn't see Matthew Tkachuk. So, I mean, it's an example of where – this is why it's a measuring stick. It's an example of where you need to get your game to beat those guys.
So tonight was the measuring stick game. Saturday night's the intensity game, both with tremendous playoff implications. Both, we're 1 for 1 on playoff level intensity. I cannot fathom Saturday being anything but even more intense than what we saw tonight. And I mean, I'm looking forward that it's because of tonight's loss. It's the biggest game of the Maple Leaf season. Like they all are, but it's a big hockey game on a big stage. And I'm really looking forward to that one.
Me too. I really can't wait for it. Kyle, awesome visiting with you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Once again, everyone, this has been a Maple Leafs post-game reaction show on the Toronto Sports Rush Network, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. We have post-game reaction shows. We have analysis all throughout the week. We are your home for Toronto sports coverage. Once again, my name is Kyle Andrew, joined by Pierre McGuire. Thank you very much for tuning in.